Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Another crazy week. Glad it is Sabbath. I remember having an argument with a guy one time. He goes, "We don't need Sabbath. Jesus came to fulfill the law." And I'm going, "Are you kidding me?" By the time Friday night comes, I'm ready to collapse. So, anyway, okay. So I'm going to start something. Anthony last week was kind of comparing things to things he likes to do, like work on cars. And I won't say that I like to do this, but this is what I do. And, to do what I do and I don't. Anyway, I'm going to show you today how an insurance policy relates to the Bible. Go ahead, give me the looks. I know everyone's going, "What the heck are you talking about?" So anyway, so let's get going with this. Okay, so what are we looking at here? This is what we call a declarations page. Okay? This is on your insurance policy, whether it's your homeowners, it's your auto policy, it's your aircraft policy, whatever policy you have. This is the declarations page. What I want to compare to you today is show how an insurance policy is similar with the Old Testament, the Torah, the Tanakh, the Torah, the prophets, and the writings, and the New Testament, the Brit Hadashah. So I will propose to you today that the declarations page, is like the New Testament. Okay? So when we read in our scriptures, we talk about what is food? What are the feasts? What is it? What is a day? What does that mean, a day? What are my other examples here? The feast, the Sabbath. When are all these different things? When you read these things, you need to be relating it to, this is the New Testament. You got to understand where the definitions, words, all that. So in here we look here, it shows the very top, the highlight says it's a commercial policy. Great. Next thing down says building coverage there on the left side, a building. What is a building? What does that mean? Well, there's definitions to what that means. There's definitions of what it is. There's definitions of what it is not. Okay? What else do we have? Special cause of loss. What does that mean? There's certain things, they're called perils, what they're covering, and what they're not covering. Replacement cost. What is that? In insurance terms, replacement cost basically means what does it cost to rebuild what is currently. If this building was demolished, what would it take to rebuild it in similar form and fashion? Okay? Deductibles, co-insurance, all those different things. What does that mean? If you take this policy and say, "I've got building coverage up to $135,000, great. What does it cover? What does it not cover? What does that mean?" Okay? So, if we had the second page, this is all the different forms that are on a policy. So at the top there we see it says CP 0010-06-07. Okay? That is the building and personal property coverage form. It tells you what is covered, what is not covered. If we go to the next page, covered property, down below it says building. A building means the building or structure described on the declaration page. And it goes on there and explaining what is included underneath that. Then on the right side it says business, personal property. That's your content, stuff you could take with you if you left that building. It defines what it means. If you go to the next page, right there it says property not covered. Wait, whoa. I thought it's a building. It's covered, right? Well, what defines what's covered? This is defining it. It gives examples of, on the right side, example 1, limit of insurance, deductible. So it's giving examples of how they're going to determine these different things. Okay, general liability coverage. Wow, great, you got liability coverage. Someone walks in here, slips and falls and gets hurt. You got coverage, great. Under what circumstances? It says you got coverage up to $1 million per occurrence, $2 million aggregate. What does that mean? You guys are still on Chris. Well, great, you're talking about insurance. We're here to talk about the Father. It's okay. So under number 1 insuring agreement, we pay all sums. We will pay those sums that the insured becomes legally obligated, etc., etc. On the letter B on the right says the insurance applies to bodily injury, property damage only if. So there's ifs. If we go on the next page, exclusions. Wait, so there's things that aren't covered. But it says I got $1 million. You got to know what's covered and what's not. Okay, Jerry, you can take that off. So the reason I'm bringing this up is, and I've been mulling this one over for a couple months. When we look at the New Testament, because one of my biggest pet peeves is if someone hands me a New Testament only Bible because it's got terms but it doesn't have definitions. When you look in the New Testament, you're talking about food. And there's a guy at work I continually go back and forth with, and, anyway, I won't bore you with that. What is food? Well, it's anything, it's everything. Well, yes and no. What is food? Well, what does it matter? Well, it does matter. You got to go to the Torah, and in Leviticus 11 it defines what is food, what is a building, what is not food, what is not covered as a building. So what is covered as a building? What is covered as food? What is not covered as food? Or the definition. What are the feasts of the Jews? No, they're not the feasts of the Jews. Leviticus 23, look at it. That's another one of my pet peeves. The feast of the Jews, it doesn't say that. It says the feast of Yahweh. These are the feasts of the Lord. These are my feasts. It defines what they are and when they are. How do you know what is a day? What's the definition of day? How do you, we here in the United States, a day is from midnight, 12:01, like on insurance policy it says, you're covered effective this date, effective 12:01 a.m. to midnight of the expiration date. So it defines when that coverage is effective. When is it applicable? When is a day? Begins and ends at sundown. That's described in Genesis chapter 1. The Sabbath, Exodus 20 and 11, where it talks about, 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but on the seventh it is the Sabbath of Yahweh your Elohim. In it you shall not do any work. You, your sons, your servants, your maidservants, etc., etc., etc. It defines what it is. So as we go out and we're looking at things in the New Testament, it's great. But as we've all heard for years and years, depending, when Paul and Peter and the apostles, all these different people are talking to whether they're Jews or they're Gentiles that are coming into understanding of the Father, you've got to have a book of definitions to understand what it is and what it means. So I'll stop there with my comparison between an insurance policy. And the funny thing is, a lot of contracts follow the biblical, the way that they're structured. And it's just kind of, it's funny, when I went into this line of business, I didn't think I'd be reading contracts and legal stuff that make your eyes want to shoot blood out of them. But anyway, okay, so I'm going to do things a little different than I used to. I'm going to go over what this Torah portion is, and I'm going to get into it. Okay, all right, I got time. Okay, so this week's Torah portion goes over the following things. The conditions by which the high priest may come into the Ark of the Covenant on Yom Kippur. Aaron's personal sin offering and atonement. The 2 he-goats and the lots. The incense service sanctifying the tabernacle from the contamination of the sins of the Israelites. The Azazel goat. Aaron performs an elevation offering for himself and the people. Conclusion of the service. Yom Kippur, the day of fasting, a Sabbath, an eternal decree. All animals slaughtered are to be brought up to the door of the tabernacle so that Israel will not fall into demon worship. Prohibition against eating blood. The life of the flesh is in the blood, which makes atonement for sin. The blood of the forbidden intimate relationships. Child sacrifice forbidden, homosexuality and bestiality forbidden, and the holiness of the land. Okay, so if everyone will stand, I'm going to do the prayer, and then we'll get into. I'm going to begin Leviticus chapter 18, verse 24. Baruch Adonai Hamvarak, Baruch Adonai Hamvarak le'olam vayed, Baruch Adonai Hamvarak le'olam vayed, Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, Asher bachar bana mikol ha'amim, v'netah lanu Torato, Baruch Ata Adonai noten ha'Torah. Bless Yahweh the Blessed One. Blessed is Yahweh the Blessed One for all eternity. Blessed are you, Yahweh our Elohim, King of the universe, who has chosen us from all peoples and given us this Torah. Blessed are you, Yahweh, giver of the Torah. Amen. Okay. Starting chapter 18, verse 24. Do not defile yourselves with any of these things, for by all these the nations are defiled, which I am casting out before you. The land is defiled, therefore I visit the punishment of the iniquities upon it, and the land vomits out its inhabitants. You shall therefore keep my statutes, my judgments, and shall not commit any of these abominations, either any of your own nation or any stranger who dwells among you. For all these abominations the men of the land have done, who were before you, and thus the land is defiled. Lest the land vomit out you out also when you defile it, as it vomited out the nations that were before you. For whoever commits any of these abominations, the persons who commit that shall be cut off from among their people. Therefore you shall keep my ordinance, so that you do not commit any of these abominable customs, which is committed before you, and that you do not defile yourselves by them. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. Okay, I'm going to go backwards here. I wanted to read that portion before we got into this. Leviticus 16, starting at verse 6. Aaron shall offer the bull as a sin offering, which is for himself, and make atonement for himself and for his house. And he shall take 2 goats and present them before Yahweh at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. Aaron shall cast lots for the 2 goats, one for Yahweh and the other for the scapegoat. And Aaron shall bring the goat on which Yahweh's lot fell and offer it as a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell to be the scapegoat shall be presented alive before Yahweh to make atonement upon it, and to let it go as a scapegoat into the wilderness. And Aaron shall bring the bull of the sin offering, which is for himself, and make atonement for himself and for his house. And shall kill the bull as a sin offering, which is for himself. Then he shall take a censer full of burned coals of fire from the altar before Yahweh, which his hands full of sweet incense beaten fine, and bring it inside the veil, and shall put incense on the fire before Yahweh, that the cloud of incense may cover the mercy seat that is in the testimony, lest he die. He shall take some of the blood of the bull and sprinkle it with his finger on the mercy seat on the east side. And before the mercy seat he shall sprinkle some of the blood with his finger 7 times. Then he shall kill the goat of the sin offering, which is for the people, bring it inside the veil, and do with that blood as he did the blood of the bull, and sprinkle it on the mercy seat, and before the mercy seat. He shall make atonement for the holy place because of the uncleanness of the children of Israel, and because of their transgressions, for all their sin. And so he shall do for the tabernacle of meeting, which remains among them in the midst of their uncleanness. Skip down to verse 20. And when he has made an end of atoning in the holy place, the tabernacle of meeting, and the altar, he shall bring the live goat. Aaron shall lay his hands on the head of the live goat, confess over it all the iniquities of the children of Israel, and all their transgressions concerning all their sins, putting them on the head of the goat, and shall send it away into the wilderness by the hand of a suitable man. The goat shall bear on itself all their iniquities to an uninhabited land, and he shall release the goat into the wilderness. Down to verse 27. The bull for a sin offering, and the goat for a sin offering, whose blood was brought in to make atonement in the holy place, as he shall be carried outside the camp, and shall be burned in the fire, their skins, their flesh, and their offal, Then he who burns them shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in water, and afterward he may come into the camp. This shall be a statute forever for you. In the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, you shall afflict your souls and do no work at it at all, whether a native of your own country or a stranger who dwells among you. For on that day the priest shall make atonement for you, and to cleanse you, that you may be clean from all your sins before Yahweh. It is the Sabbath of solemn rest for you, and you shall afflict your souls. It is a statute forever. Okay, you may be seated. I'm going to continue on before I close out the prayer. I'm going to go into Hebrews chapter 8. As many of you have heard me always say, as we're reading the Torah portion, as we're studying the Torah, we're always looking forward towards Messiah. Where is it talking about these things that are pointing toward the one like Moses that has come to take away the sin? Hebrews chapter 8, verse 1. Now this is the main point of the things which we are saying. We have such a high priest who is seated at the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens, a minister of the sanctuary and a true tabernacle which Yahweh erected, and not man. For every high priest is appointed to offer both gifts and sacrifices. Therefore it is necessary that this one also have something to offer. For if he were on earth, he would not be a priest, since there are priests who offer gifts according to the law, who serve the copy and shadow of the heavenly things, as Moses was divinely instructed when he was about to make the tabernacle. For he said, "See that you make all things according to the pattern shown you on the mountain." But now he has obtained a more excellent ministry, inasmuch as he is also mediator of a better covenant, which was established on better promises. For if the first covenant had been faultless, then no place would have been sought for a second. Because finding fault with them, he said, "Behold, the days are coming, says Yahweh, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah, not according to the covenant I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they did not continue in my covenant. But I disregarded them, says Yahweh. For this is my covenant I will make with the house of Israel in those days, says Yahweh. I will put my laws in their mind and write them on their hearts. And I will be their Elohim, and they will be my people. None of them shall teach his neighbor, and none his brother, saying, Know Yahweh. For all shall know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them. For I will be merciful to their unrighteousness, and their sin and their lawless deeds I will remember no more. And that he says, a new covenant he has made the first obsolete. Now that it is becoming obsolete, growing old is ready to vanish away. I've got some other I'm going to go on, but it's amazing. I love the similarities and how it's pointing toward it. What does it say? The verse 5, who serves a copy and shadow of the heavenly things, the things we're doing, so that when we see them in the heaven, that we've already prepared for them. And of course, this guy at work I talk with, and of course he says, see the first is obsolete and it's ready to vanish away and so forth. And so I was reading this week and I was looking at it and I said, okay, let's keep going on. It's all about the sacrificial system, because they would take, if they have 50 goats or cattle or whatever it is in their area, they'd find the one that's shaking in the corner that could barely stand, and going, yeah, we'll take that one. That one will cover my sin. And of course, he said, well, fine. You take that offering and give it to the governor of your that rules over you, and see how he likes that. See how he likes that tainted animal that's bruised and splotched up and so forth. So I'm going to kind of graze through this real quickly. Chapter 9, it's interesting. The first portion of 9 they're talking about the tabernacle. For the tabernacle was prepared the first part. It had the lampstand, the showbread, and the table, which is the sanctuary. Then behind the second veil, called the holiest of all, which had the golden censer and the ark of the covenant, had the Aaron's rod that had budded, and the tablets, and then the cherubim. And then it says in verse 7, it says, "But into the second part of the high priest went alone once a year, not without blood, for which he offered for himself and for the people's sins committed in ignorance." The rest of this gets really interesting. The Holy Spirit indicating this, that the way of the holiest of all was not yet made manifest while the first tabernacle was still standing. It was symbolic for the present time, in which both gifts and sacrifices are offered, which cannot make him who performed the service perfect in regard to the conscience. And then it's kind of going on, concerned only with food and drinks and various washings and fleshly ordinances imposed until the time of Reformation. But Messiah came as high priest of the good things to come, with the greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is, not of this creation. Not with the blood of bulls and goats and calves, but with his own blood he entered the most holy place, once for all, having obtained eternal redemption. For if the blood of bulls and goats, the ashes of the heifer, the sprinkling the unclean, sanctifies and purifying the flesh, how much more shall be the blood of Messiah, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without blood to Elohim, cleanse your conscience from the dead works to serve the living Elohim. For this reason he was made mediator of a new covenant by means of death, for the redemption of the transgressions under the first covenant, that those who were called may receive the promise of eternal inheritance. For where there was a testament, there must be also the necessity of the death of the testator. For the testament is enforced after men are dead, since it has no power at all while the testator lives, simply like a last will and testament. Therefore, not even the first covenant was dedicated without blood. And it goes on to talk about what Moses did. To verse 22, according to law, almost all things were purified with blood, and without shedding of blood there was no remission. I encourage you to go on to chapter 9 and 10. It was just awesome reading all this. 10 verse 18, now where there's no remission of these, there's no longer an offering for sin. It was just, I don't know. It's like an old friend. I found an old Bible with all my highlighted stuff, and I was like, wow, I forgot I studied this a while back. So let me just kind of close with this. First of all, I wanted to go with the first portion I read in the Torah talking about the land. About a year ago, I was doing a study on and looking at Deuteronomy, which is kind of it's like a refresher course of everything that happened in the first 4 books of the Torah. And I learned really quickly that the land, and I've said this before, the land, it is not the land of Israel. It's not their land. They are tenants in that land. That land belongs to Yahweh. That is His land. And as He said, don't do the things of those who lived there before, because if you do, the land is vomiting out them because of their abominations and their sinfulness. Do not follow the ways of them. There's other parts in the Scripture that says, don't say, well, what gods did they worship when they were here? How did they serve their God? Don't do that. Do not follow them there, because He's telling them, He says, it's not because how wonderful you were. It's because I loved your fathers and I love you. But if you become as abominable as you, the land will vomit you out, just like it did the ones that were vomited out as we go in to take the land. That was that part. This morning is interesting. It's interesting how a conversation can kind of give you focus when you think it doesn't. Let no one steal your joy. What is the whole thing of this all these things going on with the high priest going into the tabernacle, and he's doing the sin offering for himself because he was sinful. Then he's saying upon the whole nation and everything. It's all about forgiveness. It's all about redemption. It's all about sanctification. Do not let anyone steal your joy. Don't let the particulars distract you from the main purpose. As it talked about the food and the drinks and the various washings and the fleshly ordinances and the things, the traditions that are good at times if they're of the Father, but not if they're not. And as it discusses the consciousness of the in Hebrews, the conscience, knowing right from wrong, and knowing when you know this is right to follow that way, and when it's not right to not follow that way. Do not let anyone steal your joy. Keep your focus on Messiah. Keep your focus on what his redemption. I'm embarrassed of the things that I do personally, that his blood covered and forgave my sin, but yet I do it again. There was one thing, if I can find it real quickly, it's in chapter 10 of Hebrews. Okay, verse 26. For if we sin willfully, after we have received the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sins, but a certain fearful expectation of judgment and fiery indignation, which will devour the adversaries. Anyone who has rejected Moses' law dies without mercy on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. Of how much worse punishment do you suppose will he be brought worthy, who has trampled the Son of Elohim underfoot, counted the blood of the covenant by which he has sanctified a common thing, and insulted the Spirit of grace? We know right from wrong. We have a conscience. We have the Holy Spirit, which I kind of look as my conscience, guiding me with the right way and trying to keep me from going the wrong way. Keep your focus on the right things, and again, do not let anyone steal your joy. Thank you very much. Shabbat Shalom.